cybersecurity and computer networking with Gabi. Today we have another special guest who is my supervisor in Italy, Pisa especially, and he is working at National Research Council as a researcher and has a lot experience in scientific field. And please introduce yourself to the viewers.
I'm Artsiom Yautsiukhin. Yes, I'm working at the National Council of Research in Italy already for about 10 years after I got my PhD in Trento. So this means that I have a total around about 15 years of experience working with cybersecurity research, and mostly I deal with security analysis, security assessment, risk, and metrics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you got your PhD from the University of Trento, the same professor.
The same professor from under supervision of Fabio Massage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly same for me also. So today we are going to talk about cybersecurity management, especially how do we apply such kind of standards to the organization, and what is the problem in practice and also in theory. And let's start from the top, like what is exactly cybersecurity management and also what does it include?
Well, cybersecurity management in general is the whole process for management of security. So in this case, it's not like equality between risk and security, but we see risk as something more generic than security. And I will speak about risk probably later. So risk, it's a process that never ends, so it's a circular process. We start with something basic, as in many similar type of process of management process, we start with understanding the system. So we call it as a risk assessment. So we assess the risk in order to understand what kind of risk exists in our system. Then we move to the next phase, which is naturally derived from the first one, is the risk treatment. So in this case, we try to understand what do we do with this risk. So we now know what is not good in our system, so we'll try to find a solution. Naturally, some other steps are required, so as soon as we have a decision what to do, we need to do that. So we apply these techniques that we selected, we do the monitoring in order to understand whether the techniques work well or not, we do any kind of communication with any stakeholder, including the top level managers, including our partners, and so on. We do the documentation, so a lot of paperwork, of course, is included there. And at some point when we, it's never end, as I said, we say that, okay, it was a nice strategy, but so right now we feel that we need to redo everything again, so we go back to square one. Most probably because we sense that new risks appear, new vulnerabilities have in our system, or something has changed with our system in general. So this is what is risk management, but let's say it's very holistic. It includes almost everything that we do about security, in managing security, but its core part is exactly understanding what kind of risk we have. So the decision-making part in understanding what is our risk, what are our risks, and what we're going to do with them. Risk assessment and risk treatment.
Okay, and the first one is the risk assessment. And for the risk assessment, the overall for the risk management, there are also so many standards that we can to comply to the organization, but more often the organization doesn't know what kind of standards do they need, and also what kind of countermeasures are there they are going to select in order to avoid such kind of risk, and also how often do they assess the risk?
Well, first of all, here we need to split apart risk assessment and security, and security certification. These are two different things, and there are different certification schemas. Some of them actually are based on risk, so they start with assessing the risk and then saying, okay, to get the certification, these type of countermeasures must be applied. Or let's say we look at your countermeasures that you have and try to understand whether they are enough in order to cope with the risk that we just identified. So in this case, risk is the core part of these risk assessment schemas, and we speak about such well-known schemas as ISO 27000 standard, 27001, something that you can get the certificate for, or if in America it is more, another standard is popular right now. It is the National Cybersecurity Framework, especially for the cyber-critical systems. There are also other standards that are based on cybersecurity, especially when we look at the standards produced by the Cloud Security Alliance. So in this case, we speak about certification of cloud. If we go back to the ISO 27000 family, so there are other standards. For some of them, you can get certification, for others not, but they're sometimes specified for a specific system like IoT or cloud again, so you can find specific standards. These standards often are supported by a list of controls that you can select from, but you are not obliged to follow all of them. But there are also standards that do not have risk embedded explicitly into the certification schema. For example, when we speak about most of the product certifications like common criteria, so it is not actually embedded there, but probably soon Europe will come up with something new with the new regulation on with a new certification schema coming from ENISA. But this is something that we will see in the future. So in this case, there is a question how to select the right one, the right certification schema is you select with respect to your need, and in this case it's a country basis or on the basis of what kind of security, what kind of system you have, like IoT, cloud, and so on, or what is your country? Is it European, Asian, or America, Canada, or US? Sometimes there is a difference. Also, in Australia, I think they also have their own standards. So that's one. Probably what Gabi meant is that there are many different, not standards, but different approaches in order to measure your security, measure your risk level. So this means that there are different processes of how you achieve, how you compute and then deal with risk. We speak about, in America we will speak about NIST standard, we may also mention Octave here, and there are such kind of framework, risk assessment framework established in many countries. For example, in Spain we speak about Marguerite. In France we speak about something produced by Clusit, Clusit I think. Mehari framework. There is something established in Italy as well. Germany, of course, it has its BSI standards. So you can find different approaches. Some of them are supported by the national state, so they try to promote it. But all of them have more or less the same core, but it's just different procedure that you follow in order to approach different types of tables that you feel, different type of metrics that you use in order to measure. But all in all, the backbone is the same.
Okay. And then, for sure, as you say, that they have the procedure for the things, and Now I would like to move on to the risk assessment part, uh, which confuses very often. And what is some people think that we can assess the risk in a very easy way, but in theory, it's still immature.
Well, it is yes and no.
And what's the common way to assess the risk, and also how's the level, something like how's the procedure for the risk assessment? Do we have something exact, the conclusion, let's say, the outcome?
Well, let's start with this. In a nutshell, so in the core, risk assessment is quite an easy thing, and we may say that most of us actually follow this procedure in our daily life. We even don't know it, that we use it. Risk assessment is relevant not only for security. Most of the management part, any management of almost anything require risk assessment. Well, when we speak about especially money, so we speak about economics, risk are considered all the time. In politics, we have almost the same thing. And the procedure is more or less the same in a nutshell. What makes it more specific is when we come to the specific areas, so then we speak about specific threats, specific vulnerabilities, specific ways of measuring impact.
Mm-hmm.
Now we speak about cybersecurity, that's why I will try to use the examples from cybersecurity, but we can find, as I said, it could be applied to everywhere. So risk assessment, in a nutshell, says that we need to understand what kind of risk we have, we need to evaluate the risk, and we need to prioritize the risk in order to understand which of the risks are the most important for us. What is the risk? Risk is anything bad that may happen with us, something that actually causes our loss.
Uncertainty.
And exactly, it must include uncertainty. So anything that includes certainty, either 1 or 0, so with a probability, is not a risk. If we really know that something will happen, if somebody will come and do something bad to us, so it's not a risk. Otherwise, also in the same way, we may speak about the opposite situation. When we know that something will not happen 100%, it's not a risk. Risk is when we have uncertainty about the situation, so something may happen or may not happen. A virus may compromise our system or may not. Ransomware may encrypt our files or not, or it could be a DOS attack against our system and not or it may not happen. So we don't know exactly. And we must say that in cyber risk management, most of the threats that we may count are exactly the risks, so that they always happen. I hardly can believe that we can imagine this system where some of the, let's say, at least common threats are missing. So they always will be there, just the question is the matter of the probability, whether the probability is high enough to consider it or so low that we may say, okay, we're not interested. So we come to the point in order to understand the main components of the risk, which are the 3 components. And these 3 components make a bridge between the technical level and the management level. This is important to understand that risk helps to link these two sides with a bridge which is called risk. Why it is important? It is important because the guys who would deal with security usually think in terms of technical values, so what can be done in order to improve our security. But security also requires cost, and this cost must be asked, so that this expenditure must be asked from the managers, from the high-level managers who actually deal with the money and who provide this money to the technical guys, and the technical guys need an instrument in order to say that we really need this in order to reduce the risk and convince those who have the money in order to invest in security. On the other hand, those who invest in security need to understand what is going on and why do they have to give money, which is not precious time and anything that they have to make. So why do they need in order to give this money. And so the main, let's say, idea is that the more we invest, the less we lose. And so we would like to invest as much as to reduce, in order to reduce the risk level of our possible losses as much as possible. So in this case, when we said it's a breach and it has to link to two sides, two shores, and this breach we may say called a threat. So threat, something that may happen, and damage your system. On the one shore we have vulnerability, so it's a technical feature, so something that says how this threat may occur. So a malware may penetrate into our system using some open port and some bug existing in an operational system that is running on our server. Or this could be a social engineering attack, like an email with a phishing that comes to a person. In this case, it is this person who is the vulnerability. So this person looks at the mail and just opens the attachment without actually considering it, considering the mail and seeing that it's a kind of phishing email. And then the company will be compromised through this vulnerability. Now, on the other shore, we have the assets and actually the possible ways of compromising the assets, possible, let's say, consequences of this asset to be compromised, like personal data that a company stores on a server. So this data could be, for example, stolen, and that's why the company will face losses. So, and this is something that managers understand because they don't want to lose money. And so in this case we have this bridge that connects two shores and helps the technicians to speak with managers. So altogether we have risk, the risk will be the vulnerability, threat and the impact. When we speak about, so where is the probability here, is it easy to see that a threat may happen or may not happen, so somebody may try to attack you or may not attack you. It's purely the intention of these bad guys or the share possibility, share likelihood that some virus, some automatic program try to attack you. But also it depends on your security, because the vulnerability level depends on how much you invest in your security. If it is hard, so the probability, although that you are under attack, so the attack will not be successful. So the more you invest here, the more your employees are trained, the harder your system, the better your policies, especially in your contingency plans, the less you lose. And finally, there is of course this part, assets, which are your impacts. So in this case, you need to understand what may happen and how this affects your system. But in this case, we don't speak about probability, we speak about the losses. So you try to understand how much you may lose if a specific threat occurs. So again, we have a probability that it's built with vulnerability level and your threat level and impact or the expected loss that you estimating your assets. When you put them together, you have the probability, you have the expected loss. When you multiply everything, you get the expected loss per, for example, for some period of time, usually it's a year. So what do you expect to lose in a year? It doesn't mean that you will lose because it's expected value, so this means that if something happens in a long period, so then you just simply share the losses every year. So if you consider, for example, one loss for $100 in 10 years, so this means that in every year you expect $10 loss.
Okay, And since our viewers are like different types of viewers, both the who have the knowledge about security and also technical part, and also who doesn't have any knowledge or background for the security or the technical things. And I would like to put the stress on human part and training part first of all. Then the asset definition. How do we assess the asset? How do we set the value for the asset? Because we have different types of asset. Okay, if we have something like a device, with etc. like this TV, we can just put the price of this TV. Or if we talk about data, the soft data or documents, how do we know the price of them? Or usually how it happens in the reality.
So, as I said in the beginning, in a nutshell, cyber risk assessment is pretty easy because it's risk assessment with quite basic probability formulas. That's why it's easy. When we come to practice, so when we try to apply this process in practice, we face a number of difficulties, and actually one of them I have Gabi just mentioned. It relates to how do we actually assign the values. We said that we need the probability and we need the loss, and the question is how to assign it. We start with the loss, so in this case we speak about assets. So we think about what is valuable for us, for the company. In general, so every two main types of assets that anyone who does the risk assessment should think about first are data and business interruption. So business interruption is something that happens. So your business continuity, it is your asset. So these two are probably the main. Data, especially data of your clients, private data, who they are, any identification numbers coming from security numbers, what numbers, passports, especially the scans of the passports, any private data about contact information like their address, their emails, so this type of personal identifiable information you should think about. You should think about health information. If you deal with health is very sensitive. It's very important to protect. So if you store the information about health of your clients, or also about your employees, so you must protect them well. And finally, last but not least, there is of course the economical, financial information relating to, for example, credit cards. Any online payment service will have this type of data. It is important to think about them first because at the first glance, many managers do not value this type of assets as assets, while in fact, because there are many and each of them cost probably once compromised will cost the company, so the cost may be really big, and with the current laws, especially with the GDPR, such kind of attacks storing your client's data may be actually devastating. They may actually, I think it was like 40% of small and medium companies attacked and whose data are stolen go out of business in six months. So keep in mind that this is one of the main things to think about. Of course, you must think about data belonging to your organization, like know-how. Of course, if your company has some specific know-how and if you make business because of it, you must protect it. Your employees, data of your employees, similar to your clients, must be protected. Your financial information or any transactions that you do also must be protected because, well, if somebody would like to make, let's say, commit a fraud, they could abuse this type of information. But as I said, the second aspect to think about is the business continuity. Is to be sure that the business you are carrying on, that actually brings money to you, is not interrupted because of an attack. Many types of attacks, even targeting completely different, let's say, goal, may harm your business continuity. Well, if somebody steals a computer, may cause the stop, or of course this will mean that the operator will not be able to produce its own its work, and if it is a crucial work for your business, all your business stops and you don't produce money. DOS attacks on your server, if you do if you organize an online payment, will be devastating for your business because nobody will be able to make money out of it. Or it could be bad publicity. We speak about government organization, or actually it's bad publicity when somebody knows about you being attacked anyway. So some of them are more devastating, others are less. So these two types of assets is something you should think about first, and not only after that you should think about the cost of your computers, cost of your programs. Sometimes cost of the application could be important, especially when we speak about such kind of attack as ransomware that could just simply encrypt everything that it finds, and if it is a very expensive program and a very necessary, so it's mostly related to the business continuity. If it is the let's say a program that helps you to design an aircraft that is not easy to purchase and costs a fortune, so this could be devastating loss for you. So the main process, the main thing to think about when you identify the asset is, okay, imagine that something happens with this, and we speak about loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability of this type of resource. Imagine that I don't have access to this resource anymore. Does it impact my system? If everybody knows about, so the first example was availability, then if everybody knows about this type of resource, so they can read whatever, or my competitors, anyone who is actually with malicious intent can see it. Can they damage me? So the confidentiality is an issue. And of course, if anyone with malicious purpose can have access to it and can damage me by any modification, so we speak about integrity, for example, bank account. So think about what you can do with bank accounts when you can manipulate it. So then your integrity is also should be taken, should be considered during the risk assessment.
Okay, the one thing that I was also asking, the human and the awareness training, awareness program, that should apply to the organization in practice, but doesn't apply very often.
Well, let's start with this. So when you assess your risks, especially cyber risk, you must look at on your system and have a holistic view. It's not enough to look at the technical issues, and if you look at the different standards with this, let's say, list of countermeasures that they provide, many of them are not technical. So it's not enough to see that your firewall works well, that your antivirus is working. It's just a small bit. You need to think
human factor also.
In many different directions, and one of them actually is human factor. You also should think about your physical security, not letting anyone to access your computer. You must think about the procedures. So you must have procedures in order to, if something happens. So what do? Everybody must know to do, because when it happens and nobody knows what to do, there is panic, and this will just increase your cost. Well, you can decrease it with a good procedure, or you can create contingency plans. So if something happens, you still are able to produce the values so that your losses are much lower. One of them is, of course, is a human aspect, of security, and this is a very important aspect, correctly underlined by Levy, especially now, because when we speak about attacks right now, it's like 80 to 90% start with social engineering attacks. Most of them are phishing attacks. So the hackers do not compromise your security because, well, it's often too hard and too unpredictable. They target people, which are probably the less reliable people, less reliable element in the system. So they try to hack them, hack people sometimes with no technical means at all. Just simply asking them, "What is your password?" Or directing them to a malicious website that actually mimic your database website. So they ask, provide the password in order to access it. They get the password in order to the required credentials, or they ask the users to execute a malicious code on their machine, and in this case they install a special tool, the shell, that helps them remotely control the machine, and then they have the foot in the system with less protection. They can continue attacking with much ease rather than attacking the system from outside. So in this case, you must patch a human. So we know that how to the basic protection is actually to patch your system, especially your operational system, and so on. What do you do with humans? How do you patch a human? The most known way of doing this is educate them. So your employees must know what kind of threats may occur because they do something. They must understand what malicious entities from outside can do in order to exploit them, and how to avoid them, what to look at, to be sure that they don't open some malicious email, don't visit some malicious. Also know, which is important from the procedural point of view, they know what to do if something happens. Not just simply sitting and looking at and whining. So they must know that if their computer is hacked, so they have to go to an administrator, or who is the administrator, where to go, and what to do. It's important also not only, let's say, punish them, but also make them your first line of defense rather than, let's say, your vulnerability.
Sacrifice
them. No, you don't sacrifice them. You say it's some. Instead of being a threat for you, they become an asset for you, a type of security asset that will help you to maintain security.
Exactly.
Because this is when everything fails, or when the technical means fail. So when technical means fail to prevent an attack happening, your employees may detect something strange, something wrong happening. System that is too slow, some data that are disappearing. They could be the early warning for you to stop the attack, to reduce the loss, and or probably even to prevent hacker to do something really malicious because they detect them too early. That's why you must tune your employees from a threat to an asset. I think this is important. Training is one of the ways of doing this. There are many ways to do that, from different cyber ranges to a simple reading quite a good handbook.
Okay. So far, as far as I know, that every risk assessment that the procedure includes cybersecurity experts in order to assess the risk. But recently, I have read also a paper which um, presents the machine learning and those artificial intelligence in order to assess the risk?
Well, it is pretty obvious that
Mhm.
this approach is
And what do you think
should appear.
Mhm. Shall we mix them in the future with with the help of machine and with the help of expert, both of them in a place, or how do you see this one?
Let's say expert. When an expert does such kind of assessment,
I
we
think it would
rely
be-
a lot on the experience of an expert. So we
Mhm.
rely on the experience of one person, and
Exactly.
so he could miss something, and he could be a good expert, not a good expert.
Mhm.
It depends on that.
Exactly. That's the point.
So we always try to get rid of the human factor. So doing this as a machine will improve in this respect, but then we'll have some problems in others. The machine, it's not so uncommon to use, let's say, machine help in risk assessment. Different knowledge bases already exist, so it's not only the expert who identified the possible risk, for example, or try to assign the values, but also the database. We just look at the database where the data were put by, let's say, group of experts from different real use cases, so they could be reused in the analysis. Applying machine learning or artificial intelligence here is pretty obvious, but it has a number of drawbacks as well. So it's like let's say one more step towards automatization. I hope that this will increase the reliability of risk assessment, but as I said, number of drawbacks. Hear that. So one thing is that you need data in order to use machine learning or an artificial intelligence that is based on machine learning. So you need data. You need really a lot of data, and we don't have that. This is the problem. This is the biggest problem of risk assessment, that we need data, even for the analysts, we need data. But artificial intelligence primarily relies on that, when expert relies a lot on its experience. So we don't have them, so how can we do this? It's a big question. Now, with the help of various, especially insurers who collects the data, some data become available, at least for the insurers themselves. So such type of approaches could be useful. So I heard about them as well. The question is how much data they have, and how much we can rely on them. It's still yet to be seen who is better, human or a machine. Another thing that we have to think about is that machine is always based on something that has happened. When the risk is something that we predict for the future. Experts, the good ones, they rely on something that they know, but they try to project it on the future. They try to understand what is happening right now, what kind of changes are ongoing in the world right now. For example, we knew that like 3 years ago, ransomware was one of the top level attacks, and its probability of being applied diminished quite a lot, because not so many ransomware attacks actually appearing right now. Hackers turn to cryptojacking, another way of getting money for them with low probability of being detected. And such things are happening every year. So in this case, how much can we rely on the data that we are collecting, especially we collected a couple of years ago? Can we rely on them right now? That's a big question. And since machine learning is so much dependent on data, big question, what can we say? Can we rely on its decisions only? Well, it's still with machine learning, everything is unclear. So it is a type of science where that helps a lot, but we often don't know how it works because we train the system, and the system produces the result, and then the question is, okay, how have it been done? And this training process is a bit of mystery. And so the question is how much we can rely on the result. This has to be tested. We need a lot of data for testing again, so we come back to the same old question. So in general, it's a good thing to use artificial intelligence, but currently I'm not sure. No, it is an obvious way how the things should progress, but it is still unclear whether we can rely on it or this will be beneficial for us or not. We should try, see, and fail or succeed this time.
Sorry for jumping among the topics, but I missed one question that I wanted to ask about risk appetite. And more you are popular, more you are attracted by the attackers. And does current risk assessment include this risk appetite?
Of course, it is usually called the exposure factor. And risk appetite is always there, but it much depends on the type of system that you're considering. Because many of the small and medium enterprises could, let's say, are not so much different from the attacker perspective. Those that are linked with large organizations, so sometimes could be of must consider higher risk, just being abused in order to penetrate, to get the bigger fish, the big organization. But when we speak about large enterprises, so in this case, average values may not be the right way not the right approach to follow. So we shouldn't use the average. We should consider the specific organization with its specific needs, with its specific risk appetite that may occur because of many different factors. Imagine, for example, a person, let's say high-level executive, that makes a statement that they don't care much about abusing some kind of slave-type labor from Asia. So they work with some organization from Asia that pays very little to their workers just because, just to make them eat, and that's it. So, but because of no work, the people must do this, and they do work for 20 hours per day or something like that. So such kind of publicity is made, such kind of bold statement is made in the Twitter, for example, somewhere in this type of media or through the television, and then various activists try to attack the system just to revenge because they don't like this kind of situation. So the risk goes up. And you can imagine many of such kind of triggers that may raise or may lower your risk appetite in this case. Of course, if we don't go to such kind of extremes, many things could be predicted, but in this case, an approach that is specific for the specific target of evaluation must be taken. It's, making it in general, so in average, would be not really useful and will lead to wrong examples. And of course, as I said, risk appetite is always there. It is usually called exposure factor. So how much you're exposed to threat.
Right. Okay, we may come to the conclusion part because it's going to be a huge conversation if we continue continuously talking. So Uh, I would like to end with a question, something like, what would it be if you suggest or recommend the best practice for non-technical guys in order to prevent.
By non-technical guys, do we mean people that use their computers? Do we mean small and medium organizations that have their business
Let's prioritize them. Okay, for two types of people, we are excluding ourselves, and then first of all, just people who doesn't know about cybersecurity at all, but they have their own PC and they have the social media and etc.
Well,
which is the weakest point for the organization also.
the main thing is to be vigilant.
Vigilant.
So it is you who should, you as an operator, must take care about security and be aware about that.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is not being overprotective, because if you spend too much on security, you can do this, so that you lose your money. So don't be paranoid and don't spend all your money on security. There is already high number of almost very cheap security measures that you can install. If you are a Windows user, there is already a Windows firewall that already does some decent job. You don't need anything else if you are just a normal user. So use it.
Study.
Don't switch it off. The antivirus, you always can find antivirus. A good antivirus for free that you can install and already protect yourself. Another thing that is related to your behavior, so you shouldn't go to some suspicious websites, and always be suspicious when unknown website asks you for some credential request, installation of something. Always be vigilant. The last but not least, and probably one of the first things that you have to do, is use strong passwords with your with important systems, like bank account, for example, or anything that is valuable for you.
Different passwords.
For example, where you store your photos or for your Facebook accounts, you must have good password, strong password, as good security practice suggests. This is very important because if you don't use the special symbols and numbers, cracking your password for a malicious user, even if it is just a combination of letters, it takes minutes. They can do this very easy, and this is the thing that you have to, you can and you should take care of. You should understand, of course, that sometimes you have a lot of passwords, a lot of things you have to protect. So try to find a good method for you that you can use in order to protect yourself.
Password management applications.
For example, different password management. Of course, this meaning that you put many of your eggs in the same basket. So be sure that the password that you use for the password manager is really strong.
Do not forget that password also. And what about the small medium enterprise who doesn't afford complete risk assessment process or the expensive devices?
I would say the main thing for the small and medium enterprises is to make risk assessment. You don't need exactly to hire someone. It is something that you have to do yourself. Take some of the guidelines, take the NIST guideline, for example, and try to make it yourself. It is important. It is important because, first, you will be surprised what is asset for you. This is one thing that you have to have in mind. What is your asset? It would be nice if you have an asset inventory. But well, we all know that the word is not perfect. But at least you must know what is to protect. Second thing, you must understand what may happen. And the next thing, let's say second dot two, dot five, is be ready for that. Cyber threats is something that you cannot prevent for 100%, but you may be ready for this happening.
Mm.
It is when you're ready, you can act. So in this case, when you do the risk assessment, when you know what may happen, what could be affected, how this can be done, and you come to the question is, what do you do if something happens, and you do it as in a good practice. So you establish a procedure saying, if this happens, then do that. If this, just make it. You will reduce your risk immensely. You will understand, but first you will understand what may happen and why do you need security actually. So you may see whether you need to invest into security, you don't need to invest into security. Even just thinking about that, conducting this for yourself without say, a specialist will already enlighten you about your system, about your risk, about what you need to do for security. And of course, with the help of the specialist, you can save even more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for the interview, and it was really worthwhile, I would say. And also, you were the second guest for this kind of interview.
I wasn't the first, okay.
Because I was in Mongolia when I was starting this.
I was hoping it was father, okay.
And yep, and have a good day. And if you want to say something to the viewers, you can say it. Otherwise,
Well,
it's okay.
the only thing is stay vigilant, always be ready that somebody would like to hack you. Well, but don't be paranoid.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Try to find the middle, the golden middle.
Okay. See you next time with another guest.